Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to another live hangout here at Voice Essentials. I'll just tell you straight off the bat. You can probably hear in my voice I'm not 100% today. I like to think I'm on the improve. About Thursday last week, I got hit with the common cold flu-y thing, and I suspect, though I'll never know. The weekend prior to that, I'd had the flu shot, and so I wonder whether I've my body's just had a response to that. Um, but it may well just be coincidental. Nonetheless, I Thursday, Friday, not good. Saturday, still not so good. Sunday, we're getting there. We're getting there. So today's show will be governed by how much my voice can handle, because today we're doing a Q&A. Regardless of that, I hope you are well wherever you are. And I want to let you know that tomorrow is World Voice Day. So today we get to say Happy World Voice Day Eve, I guess. The 16th of April is celebrated every year as World Voice Day. It's something that we've acknowledged here for many a year. And so, yeah, it was, in fact, yesterday I was able to go to an ANATS event, an ANATS Queensland chapter event. So for those of you who don't know, I live in Brisbane, Australia, which is in the state of Queensland. And the state of Queensland, for those of you who are internationals, we have the Great Barrier Reef that runs down our eastern coast, and so that's sort of one of the world's natural wonders is the Great Barrier Reef. Anyway, yesterday the ANATS Queensland chapter hosted. Excuse me. You see, I don't know how far I'm going to get today. Hosted a gentleman by the name of Tim Carson. He's from the US. He's a singing teacher in pop styles, and he was talking about his presentation was titled "Hitting the Money Notes," or something like that. Money Notes was definitely in the title, and yeah, so it was good to watch him work, and he masterclassed to singers, and he got some really good results, and it was interesting to see. It's always interesting to see another singing teacher ply their craft, and it was evident that Tim has been doing it for many, many years. And so thank you to the ANATS Queensland chapter committee who put that on. I know how much work goes into putting those events on, because I was once the Queensland chapter state president, and so, you know, kudos to the whole team for putting on what was a really well attended day. I would like to think the committee was happy with the level of attendance, because there would have been, 30 or 40 singing teachers there, which was really good. Next week, and so just to wrap that up, they were doing that in celebration yesterday on the 14th. They were doing that in celebration of World Voice Day, which is tomorrow. So there you go. Next week, just to remind, we have Sharon joining us on the show, and Sharon Tree. We're going to be talking about myth busting, and it's so important to clarify and disenable misinformation about voice, because we know so much about voice. There's so much research that has been done into voice now that we always need to put to bed long-standing myths that have come about through monkey see, monkey do, blind following the blind, and so we'll have Sharon on the show next week. And I'm looking forward to that. Sharon is a very special friend of mine, and everyone who comes onto the channel is a friend. But Sharon is a person who I have had a personal friendship with for many, many years. She's a dear friend and a great singing teacher in Canberra, which is many of you internationals. Again, here's another interesting thing about Australia. So a lot of internationals think that Sydney is our national capital, when in fact it is not. A place called Canberra is our national capital, and that's where Sharon is. Let's get to. I'm not going to last. I thought I would last longer than I'm now think I'm going to last. I'm going to jump into a question. If you have a question that you want answered, and I'm going to have some water. It's interesting, isn't it? Because physically, I'm feeling a lot better. In fact, I have already taught this morning. But because physically, I'm feeling okay. But you know, the impact on our voice when we have an upper respiratory tract infection, and that's what I'm dealing with here. Who knows what it is? Just that common cold and flu. The impact on the voice can be quite significant, and here I am. And it's in these times that we do have to be careful with the use of our voice, and so as you would expect, I'm going to be mindful of my own vocal condition today, and we'll answer one or two questions, and then I think we're going to have to call it a day. I do apologize for that, but I didn't want to miss today, and hence that's why I'm here. But that being said, I think we've got to be sensible as well. So last week there was some questions that were that we didn't quite get to, and in the absence of any current questions, I'll quickly start with those. There was a question asked by Swan GJ Chow, and I apologise if that's almost certainly not how to pronounce your name, but and they asked, how do you train for the middle range? I think that's a really interesting question to answer, because a big part of what Tim was saying yesterday at the ANATS event, and I wholeheartedly agreed with him. He really refuted this idea of a mixed voice, a middle range, because there is no such thing. And I think it might have been last week we talked to that again. And so when we talk about, you know, building our mix value, if we can put it like that, we're really talking about muscular balance. But one thing that Tim didn't go into yesterday, which I would have loved to have heard him talk more to, is it's not only the muscular balance of the voice that we need to attend to when we're thinking about our registers. We also have to think, well, actually I say Tim didn't speak to this. He actually did, but not in these terms. And that is, we also have to account for the resonance strategies that we're playing. And so, because we have to, the way your sound, the resonance is moving through your vocal tract, and the shape of your vocal tract has an impact on the muscular and oscillatory nature of the vocal folds themselves as you are moving through your range. And it's different depending on where you are. And that's part of the reason why when we get to our transitional space, and this for most female singers sits smack bang in the middle of your voice. And so when we talk about middle voice, for females, we're often talking about that transitional space. And so when we are moving through that transition, we have to not only work the coordination of the voice and the musculature, but we also have to work what we're doing with the resonance strategies in those moments. And a big part of working that is to ensure that you are developing the whole voice. And we can do that in compartments, working the lower register in a short and a dominant mode, working the upper register in a length and a dominant mode, working falsetto or flute register is what the Thurman and Welch model refers to it for women, working that in a separate space, and then learning to move between those three. There is a fourth one right at the bottom, pulse register, where the vocal folds are just pulsing and not really creating a tone per se. And of course there is whistle tone, which sits above, which is a very specific posture of the vocal folds. But the body of the voice, let's say the body where we've got those three registers. And so you can see this idea of middle voice is not really an accurate way, nor is mix, because the whole thing is a mix. And it's just on how much weight you apply or do not apply at any given moment. And so we go right into this in the Voice Essentials program, and you can jump in and have a look at that in your own time. There's a lot of lovely well wishes that are being given today. Dean has said to take care of myself. I will, Dean. Thank you. Ni Bi Sha Book Way. I hope that's how we say it. Dan, we sure understand. Just get well. Thank you. And Kelly is saying, please be kind to yourself as you're always kind to. Oh, Kelly, I will be kind to myself, and I do try. I do try to be kind to all of you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to answer one more question, and aside from any questions coming through, so if you do have a question, it may well be that I've got enough voice to answer one live question today. So please, jump in. Destiny Lord last week said, may I ask, is singing with a high larynx useful for, say, voice actors that are voicing a high register character that also has a singing part? This was, not surprisingly, this was also a part of the discussion yesterday from Tim in talking about laryngeal position. I probably differ from Tim in he was really appeared to be advocating for quite a low larynx position. And he was doing that, and this part I did agree with. He was doing that very much from the point of view of getting that hiked larynx down. Couldn't agree more, because when we are singing, and as contemporary vocals, there is a real tendency for beginner singers to want to hike the larynx, to want to push the larynx really high, and we do that in part because we're looking for a brightness in the tone, and we're looking for energy, and so everything gets lifted and narrowed and pressurized. It's a surefire way to do your voice in quite quickly, actually. Whereas what I advocate for is more so a neutral larynx. Now, one of the reasons I advocate for a neutral larynx is, as opposed to the exact opposite of a hiked larynx, which would be an imposed or lowered larynx, is because actually there are times when a higher laryngeal position is actually going to be beneficial. We do see this in certain values. Belt actually does have a higher position. The challenge, though, in having a higher position larynx is, firstly, you never want it to go high and stay high. No, you always want it to come back to neutral. You always want it to come back to that level setting, firstly. Secondly, that higher larynx doesn't mean that everything above the larynx then, supraglottic, above the vocal folds of a higher larynx, has to be tight. For most beginner singers, a high larynx immediately means everything is tight above it. But we don't. We don't want the constrictor, the pharyngeal constrictors, to activate just because the larynx has moved high. Often with good belt, and this is how I teach belt, we do want to have the resonant strategy of twang as a key ingredient. So we do get a narrowing of the laryngeal pharyngeal space, but that doesn't mean the constrictors of the pharyngeal wall need to activate also. This has to be done in turn with good lowered threshold pressure, phonatory threshold pressure, but a continuous phonatory threshold flow, an even flow of air. You can see why getting all of this to work in balance is not easy. It is hard. If it were easy, everyone would be doing it. And this is why we have to learn how to do these things, simply because the coordination of these activities takes a lot of work. And so what we go looking for is this sense of neutral larynx. And there are times, incidentally, where we do, for colouring and for certain activities, we do want to have the larynx lower a bit. But again, for a contemporary singer, always coming back up to that neutral position. It is like, and I've used this analogy before, it is like a buoy, a B-U-O-Y, on the sea, where, you know, when the swell moves up, the buoy, I think some people pronounce it buoy. I'm just going to call it a buoy. It moves up, and then as the swell moves down, it comes down. A buoy never goes up, and the swell comes down, and the buoy stays up. That's not how it works. The buoy needs to move freely. Yeah, it wants to move like this. But the only way it can move freely is when we don't have this extrinsic muscular tension, this intrinsic muscular tension of the constrictors. And so it's really important that we continue to work towards this sense of freedom at a muscular level within the voice. And I you know, just so I don't, I'm not misheard, I think that's exactly what Tim was definitely advocating for. And he really talked a lot too about having the tongue placement forward, which is something that we work a lot here at Voice Essentials. There were so many similarities with certainly the way Tim approaches his pedagogy, just a little different to mine, but you know, I reckon we were pretty much, you know, teaching from the same hymn sheet. So it was really good. Tim, you'll never have a reason to watch this, despite the fact that I introduced myself after the thing. But I enjoyed your presentation. So there you go. I think, do you know what? I'm listening to my voice and I'm going, the wise thing for me to do is to call it a day. What do you reckon? I do thank you for all of your well wishes, and just again, just a reminder. I can see here another comment from Destiny, just in response to that. So it sounds like singing. Let me see. Let me if I'll throw that up. So, did I get that? Let me make sure. So Destiny's just saying, in response to her question from last week, so it sounds like singing with a high larynx is okay, so long as you don't constrict your throat. I imagine this takes a lot of practice and experimentation using muscles you don't consciously use. Yes, absolutely. Because the reality is, I think even if you were to find yourself imposing the larynx in order to have more warmth, as you go into wanting to belt into high notes, the larynx is going to lift, and so what you're then doing is creating tension to hold the larynx down while it wants to go up. And I personally think, my observation would be that that would lead to unnecessary tension also. Whereas if the whole mechanism is free and coordinated, and that's the kicker there, coordinated. It's so hard to develop that coordination so that you're not just simply setting up a row of dominoes and you push one domino, for example, heightened larynx, and everything else, then suddenly you've got constriction and suddenly you've got high pressure, and it's really hard to allow the larynx to move high without those other dominoes falling over. And that's the skill, right? This is why so few people just do it naturally. It's not a natural thing for your voice to do. It's something it has to learn to do. And so, Destiny, I hope that's helpful. This is another comment here. We can wait. Do not hurt yourself here. I'm not going to hurt myself. I promise I won't hurt myself. And I am being measured in my voice use, as you can hear. I'm gonna call it a day. In anticipation of World Voice Day. Apologies for the short session today. I think it's just wise. And for those of you who are not familiar with if this is the first time you've ever heard the live show, I am not usually this low. And that speaks to some swelling at the level of the vocal folds. So let's call it a day. Let's reconvene next week. We've got Sharon joining us. I am super excited about the coming months, because we've got Sharon next week. A few weeks after that, we've in the coming months we've got, well, we'll talk more about it later. I'm going to start resting my voice. I hope you've enjoyed today's show. and Linda, thanks for hanging out. Thank you for all of you for hanging out. And your well wishes. I'm very, very appreciative of that. And I very much look forward to seeing you again next week. I will be in much better condition next week. I will, because I'm already feeling a lot better. It's just this guy's got to get back on track as well. I look forward to seeing you again next week. I'm Dr. Dan. Sing well.